I think the Disney writers have the IQ of a sardine. How the heck do they come up with these stories and actually think they're good? And who's approving them? Why, how? It's like there's so much you could do with
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of A Lost Plot, the podcast by storytellers for storytellers so that we can tell better stories ourselves. As always, I'm your host, Maverick, and today we have back with us our co-host, Andrew, to review the fifth installment in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. Sorry, we're getting through all of them. We're talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales. Or if you're in certain parts of the world, it's Pirates of the Caribbean, Salazar's Revenge. The story is by Jeff Nathanson and Terry Rossio, and it is screenplays by Jeff Nathanson as well. It is directed by Joachim Ronning and Espen Sandberg. And it is, of course, produced by Jerry Bruckheimer. So, getting right into those initial impressions, Andrew, what was your thoughts and rating for Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales?
It's modern Disney. It's crazy because with Star Wars, they didn't own it before, but Pirates, they took their own franchise and trashed on it pretty terribly, I might add. This is like a terrible version of Episode 7 is the best way I can put this. And I'm sure we'll explain why, or I will at least, as we progress, but I think this is a movie that heavily relies on nostalgia and callbacks and has nothing that's really going for it in its own right.
Yeah. I feel like this is the epitome of full-on devolvement of Disney, and you can clearly see that in what Andrew thought. I think so as well. I think the reasons for that come from a couple of things. One is just like the modernization of the Disney storytelling framework, right? And then second off, the reversals of what they focus on, which you see a lot of. We talked about this in the Star Wars films, especially underneath 7, 8, and 9, especially 9. But you get that as well in this film, where they will take where they're going with something and go in a completely new direction with it, just because they think, oh, we need to appeal to the audiences or something more. We'll get into why we think that's the case. Of course, that's hypothesis more than fact, but we'll get into all that. The purpose, all in all, is to say that like this is the de-evolution of Disney at its worst, in my opinion, and I think that my rating reflects that at a 1.35. So this is definitely one of the lowest ratings I have given on the podcast to a film. I recall distinctly watching this time and being bored out of my blitzkrieged mind that I was watching this film. There was only one point in the entire film that I actually was piqued in curiosity, and we'll get to that and why that's the case. I don't think it speaks well of this film. It does not deserve a good rating. You probably do not want to watch this ever, and if you did once, I'm sorry. So, yeah. I don't know if you have more to add to that, Andrew. Otherwise, we're going to get right into it.
I'm actually pulling up my rating right now because I had to fill it out on my phone. The link doesn't work for some reason on my computer, so
Weird. It worked for me.
On your computer?
Mm-hmm.
Now it just won't submit. I literally tried it on my computer, got nothing. Trying it on here, getting nothing. That is really irksome.
That is really random.
I mean, off the top of my head, I'd probably give this like a 0.8. I'm not even joking. I think this film actually has nothing going for it.
For the purpose of those who are, putting anything on that rating, that was not an official rating, so it doesn't count.
Lamau. Let me see it. Oh, wow. The website works right now. Okay. I'll have it up in a few minutes, but no, I don't have anything.
As we always do, we want to give you guys an understanding of what this film is about in case you haven't watched it. So, Andrew, could you give us a summary of Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales?
Oh, thank goodness it went through. Holy crap. Okay, wow, that's crazy. My actual rating, based on the answers that I already put down, was a 0.9. So, not that far
That's
off from the point eight. It's
crazy.
actually 0.9000000000000000001. So, anyways, terrible movie. If you would like the synopsis, here we go. Movie starts out. We see a young boy who we end up finding out is Henry Turner, the son of Elizabeth Swan and Will Turner, now Elizabeth Turner. He has found the Flying Dutchman. How? I'm not entirely sure, but he just finds it off the coast of some island, presumably where he lives, because I don't know how a small child would go to another island on his own.
Honestly, I assumed that that was just like daddy coming to save his son, and he was like utilizing that against him. But,
What do you mean?
whatever. Like, he finds the Flying Dutchman because the Dutchman literally comes to him as he like sinks himself into the water.
Maybe. Either way, he finds Will Turner. Will Turner sends him back off, says, "Go away. You can't break my curse." He says, "I'm going to break your curse. I'm going to find this thing called the Trident. The Trident is the answer to all curses on the entire ocean. Why we've never heard of it, I'm not sure." Moving on, though, we find Will Turner's an adult now. We also find Jack Sparrow is robbing a bank. They try to recreate the Jack Sparrow scene. He robs a bank, sleeps with somebody's wife. They end up going on this insane heist where they have horses pulling an entire building through a village, take it onto the ship. They lose all the gold. Jack loses his crew. He ends up getting taken to jail because he's a wanted man now. Henry Turner finds him. Also, Henry Turner is convicted of treason because he tries to stop a British naval vessel from going into what is called the Devil's Triangle, which is where Salazar is. We find out Salazar hates Jack Sparrow because Jack Sparrow is his mortal enemy. For what reason, we don't know yet. We find out later that Jack Sparrow, I guess, was the person who got him stuck in the Devil's Triangle by leading him into it and their ship crashed. Why the curse triggered, not really sure, but curses in this movie are a little weird, and we'll get to that later. Anyways, Salazar and his crew are freed because Jack gives his compass away, and apparently giving it away breaks that part of the curse. Jack ends up getting his compass back eventually, or maybe Henry Turner. Oh, no. Yeah. Honestly, I don't even remember. That movie was boring. The compass changes hands several times.
Well, he trades it for booze.
He trades it for
At the
booze, and
beginning of
somehow
the
a
film.
witch gets it. We don't know how.
Yeah.
Then she gives it to Barbossa.
Yeah.
Barbossa goes to make a deal with Salazar, breaks the deal with Salazar, works with Jack Sparrow, uses Blackbeard's sword to break the black pearl out of a bottle. They use the pearl to run away from Salazar. Then we find out that Caryna Smith, a random girl boss from this movie, who's apparently a scientist, though I have my doubts, is the daughter of this Barbossa character. But we don't get much time to dwell on that because he immediately dies. And then we find out that, everyone's happy because they get the Trident to break the curses. Will Turner's back home, and then we get an end credit scene with Davy Jones, which is the only interesting part of this entire film.
Yeah. Basically. I honestly kind of agree with that. We'll get into some of the random stats about the ending for sure, because boy, I think we'll spend more time on that than a lot of other aspects of this film. But let's get into the opening scene, as we always do, opening it up. Did they convince us that this is worth watching from the start? What are your thoughts on that opening scene, Andrew? You have the getaway with the gold, the ridiculous escape of the pirates, and I guess the opener with Will and Henry, his son. What are your thoughts on those two scenes?
From the get-go, this movie's already disappointing me because the second you get Henry Turner on the Dutchman, it is giving Will Turner and Bootstrap Bill. And it's not necessarily like that's inherently bad, I guess, but they're trying so hard, even from the very opening scene of this film, to just call back to the original three movies. And I think what happened is the first three did great. Fourth movie flopped. They went, oh, shoot, we're doing bad now. I guess we can only go back to the one idea that we had before to make a movie successful. And so Henry Turner turns into this caricature of Will Turner with so much less depth even from the get-go, and his entire motivation is just, I need to free you, father, and I have found this compass and I'm going like to discover every curse in the sea. When it comes to Jack Sparrow, well, actually, I don't know if you had anything on that scene specifically. I was going to move on to Jack.
No, I mean, well, I do. But sorry, let me
Okay.
restart that. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that you're hitting on from the start that is epitomizing the problems with these films, and you get it from the very beginning. Is that flip flopping that I mentioned just briefly at the beginning that Disney has just started to do at this point, where they go, "Oh, we're going to do this thing. We're going to go in this direction," right? And you get this wave of like, "Oh, let's make Jack Sparrow emotional and have like these feelings and be honest with people about how he's feeling." And this is just totally different from the characters we had known to be Jack Sparrow previously. And so you look at that and you go, hold on, this isn't the real Jack Sparrow. And then you see they revert to this other Jack Sparrow that's the like most stock version of Jack Sparrow that you've ever seen, right? Where you see him just,
Yeah.
and we'll get into that, but like, you know, you have that, you have the example of like, oh, let's just go back to the basic pirate threat: cursed pirates, cursed person who wants to kill Jack Sparrow. We've done this before, we'll do it again. You know, you see that with, oh, let's have a side character who's a male who's also in love with this female side character, who both happen to be stuck on a ship with Jack Sparrow. You know, like every element of this seems to have some cognizant connection to something we've already seen in the Pirates universe. And so the question is, what is this film specifically adding to the body of knowledge in a new and unique way than what we've seen previously in the Pirates universe? And that's a question that still remains to be answered. And so you get that from the start with Will Turner and his son Henry mirroring Bootstrap Bill and Will Turner rather than extending any aspect of that.
Well, I think the other thing too is like Disney, it's so weird, right? When you consider the fact that the Pirates movies themselves were Disney branching out and doing something new and unique that hadn't been done before. And it did well. But then you get Disney like post 2010 or something, and it's like they've all of a sudden had this mindset shift where they're like, oh, we can only make movies if we're guaranteed or we have some semblance of an idea that will be successful in the production of this film. And so they go, either one, we're going to go off the deep end and do something absolutely insane, not make our own universe. We're going to break a pre-existing universe because we know people will show up to watch it, but we're going to do something completely different. That ends up tanking, as it always does. I don't know that there's really any example of where they take an established canon, absolutely wreck the canon because they want to do something new and unique, and then people don't like it because of that, and then they just blame it on the fact that, oh, people just didn't like the movie, we're not sure why, so let's just go back and call back to the older movies that we know they liked. And so it's like they have two solutions, and it's like they have this two-track mindset, and if one doesn't work, they go to the other, but neither one has worked in the past. And so like the only movies I can really think of that I can point to as like these are successful that are truly calling back are just the straight up live action remakes. And that's because for the most part, it's just a shot for shot. And so they're not really going to miss with that because it's exactly what it was before. And they're not like does that make sense? Not like calling back to those films.
Yeah, it's just a reenactment for the next generation, if you will, right? You have the old generation of people who grew up with these films and they really liked them as a kid, and now they want to re-see them in a new makeup, more or less. And
Yeah.
then they're also introducing the same story to a new audience. So yeah, that totally makes sense. I think some of what you're talking about with that random shift, if you will, from pushing out, trying these new ideas, testing new waters that we had from Disney in the early 2000s, but seemed to completely go away in the 2010s, does speak to something that I've heard other people talk about as well, but might be relevant to discuss here, is the idea of streaming and how streaming became such a popular medium for telling these stories, just because there was a rise in 2009, at least for Netflix, and then it proceeded from all the other companies as they started to open their own streaming services with their streaming platform compared to their DVD rental platform, right? It was surpassed in 2009 by streaming, and then from there it started to accelerate until it came to full swing in 2015, 2016. And basically at this point, DVDs have died out. People don't really use DVDs for the most part compared to streaming as a service, which means in regards to revenue to be had for these companies to recoup losses from films, you don't have the DVD input in regards to the financial incentive for these films, right? And so the idea that every single film has to be profitable from the start is something you see in the early like in the 2010s. So the idea that they
Mhm.
were looking for those guaranteed shots in these films, making it a safe bet, that makes sense they did that for this film, because this is around that time where they needed to have every film try to be profitable in the theaters, not just in the ensuing months as people bought the DVDs.
Yeah. I think it's hard to pinpoint too, right? Because you can mark a year like 2010, and then there are still good movies that come out post 2010 from Disney. I think it's just like there's this,
Sure.
whether or not it's in actuality, there's a general sentiment that most films of like the last decade, decade and a half from Disney have been pretty low quality
Yes. Yes.
in terms of the story itself. And I'm sure you could point to a ton of different films that people either liked or did somewhat successful. But in terms of the ones that I don't know if I would say in good conscience say, but like truthfully look at and go, I think this was a genuinely good story here. There's very few. Um, that said, yeah, I mean, I think this opener too is absolutely tragic compared to the other openers we've got with Jack Sparrow. I think it does a massive disservice to his character. His entire character is whittled down to just this caricature of being a drunk buffoon the entire film, whereas opposed to previous films, he got out of tough situations through luck, but it was coupled with his wit, his ability
Mhm.
to flex and work around and play the system. It wasn't so much his luck as it was he's getting thrown a hand and he can just make do with whatever he gets. And so this film is just like he's just straight up lucky, like the entire film. And we don't really get a chance to see Jack shine at all, because the entire film he's just sitting there like bumbling around like an absolute retard the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that part of Jack's character has been that he is lucky in spite of everything that goes on, but the idea that he has devolved is definitely a real aspect of this in a couple of ways. One, just looking at Jack from the start, I mean, they just go over the top. Everything becomes, let's take what it is and whittle it down to its more base form in this film, right? You get that with the action scenes. All the action scenes are just over the top. You get that from the very start with this uh not chest, but safe that has all this
Yeah.
money in it, and then the house being pulled with it, and everything else that's going on is just insane, right?
Yeah.
And then it gets put onto this tiny boat, also like this absolute miniature sized boat that they're using to transport themselves across the ocean. And like things like this showing that what they're doing is in its base form. You see Jack Sparrow himself becomes a more base form version of it, where yeah, luck is all that he is, and his motivation and reason to be there is beyond basic, right? They tried to do this emotional, like, oh, who is Jack Sparrow and what is his purpose in life and what is his love of life and all of this stuff in the last one. And they went, oh, that's not working. People didn't really love that. What are we going to do? Okay, well, let's just make him the basic pirate buffoon that we've seen in the other films as he's running around crazily. Let's just make the entire film him doing that. And guess what? That's what you got. And so you see that in the way that even the lines that he said before, they were kind of clever, and like he was messing with people or like trying to one up people. You see that with the massive spyglass, for example, in the third film, and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. But in this film, the main thing you hear him saying is like, "Oh, the crew should pay me money," and he says that line like 10 times in the
Oh
film, and you go,
yeah.
"Okay, this is an old joke at this point. This is like the uncle who came to Thanksgiving and keeps telling the same joke every 2 hours to try to be the funny uncle. Like, dude, you need to calm down. We don't need to hear this joke over and over again." But the
Yeah.
writers decided that was important to keep bringing up for some reason because they thought it'd be funny. So, there's things like that you see in the film that show that they have not really, they're trying to be as safe as possible, if you will. And as a result, you have everything in its base form, and that just inherently doesn't add to a compelling story.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you wanted to add more to Jack Sparrow, because I don't even know. Would you say he's the main character in this film?
Probably not, but I don't know that the person I would say is the main character really. Honestly, I have a trouble with this one because I think they're all so bad and have such poor development and depth as characters. It's hard to point to one and go, "Oh, this must be the main character." I think it's probably supposed to be Henry Turner, but I think he's a very weak protagonist.
Well, yes, I would agree with that, but for sure, I think he's the main character, which is a little unusual from what we've seen previously, because in the past, at least, Jack had a very front and center role, versus in this one, you don't get that, because,
Well,
I mean...
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, just before... I mean, my initial thoughts with this is that the reason Henry is the main character is because Jack doesn't have a reason to be involved in the plot at all, basically.
Yeah.
And it's because, one, the person that wants the trident is not Jack. It's Henry. He wants the trident to free his father. And two, the main threat to Jack in this plot is Salazar. And as much as Salazar might or might not want to kill Jack Sparrow can run away by going on land, and then he's safe, which he's done in previous films. In the second one, he puts his own life at risk by hanging out with cannibals for who knows how long to try to stay away from the ocean so that he wouldn't meet with Davy Jones. So the idea that he's willing to just live it up on land to try to avoid a problem is definitely par for the course for Jack Sparrow. This is not a threat to Jack Sparrow that he needs to take seriously. So why is he there? Basically because it's convenient for the plot. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
anyways,
I think.
go
Well,
ahead.
the other thing is, like, all the previous movies, even the fourth one, for how bad it was, Jack was still a driving force to some extent in the plot. And this movie, he is more just like dead weight that gets drug around. And what really bothered me is that Henry is like dead set on finding Jack Sparrow so that Jack can help him find his dad, but Jack really doesn't help him like at all. Like the entire film. And like we're told for like the first 30 minutes of the film that he needs Jack Sparrow to free his dad. And then as soon as he gets to him, it's like, oh, actually he didn't need him that, but we're just going to pretend that he does because he's on the same boat. Right. But yeah. Do you want to talk about Henry? Do you want to talk about Caryna? I don't know. I've got thoughts on all of it.
We should probably talk about Henry to start because he's the main guy, right? And at least he's positioned as the main guy from the start, having that opening scene with his father, Will, and getting that Bootstrap Will reenactment with Will and Henry now. What are your thoughts on him as a character in this film? Do you think he's compelling?
No.
Go ahead.
Henry's entire character arc can be summarized in the following words. I must break my father's curse. Where have we heard that before? Oh, I don't know. Maybe Will Turner in like movies 2 and 3, which are infinitely better than this one, even a single one of them. And they're not even a complete story. Like, and when you are talking about the overarching story of Will Turner, right? Unfortunately, the film gives him like absolutely nothing beyond that. So like, unlike Will, you get like these moral conflicts, these flaws that he has, these relationships, these struggles he's going through, the inner struggle because he has to combat the idea of what he has to give up in order to free his father. with Henry, it's just, I just need to find this magical wand and just bippity boppity boo, go shoo, Flying Dutchman, and give me my poppy back. And it's like, there's no actual like cost to him. Whereas with Will, there was significant cost to freeing his dad, cost to his relationships, cost to his values and the morals that he held to, cost to his own life by the end of everything. He's got no sense of humor, which Will did have, which made his character more enjoyable to watch too. Is like, he wasn't this completely just flat, like, he's not like the altruistic, idealistic idiot who's just there, just like, I'm gonna do what's right, and I have like no actual personality at all. He doesn't really, it's like the story, his motivations are drawn onto him rather than out of him. He has no real like persona. Like he's a flat blank character in that he doesn't really have these unique quirks about him. There's nothing interesting about him other than the fact that he's the son of Will and Elizabeth, but we don't even get that out of him. Like, what, I feel like someone who's the son of those two figures should have something to grapple with, right? He doesn't really seem to have any sort of like trauma as a character too, for someone who's been living their whole life desperately in search of their father but never got to see him save for one day out of the year. And you best believe that one day wasn't spent with his son the entire time. Okay.
Yeah. And it's like once every 10 years too. It's not even
once every 10 years. Sorry.
Yeah.
He is literally just there to move the plot along through like little explanations. He never grapples with the burden of his father's fate. He is only there to like explain curses, which I'm just going to say this now. Him and Caryna, I think, both function as just plot devices, unfortunately, but the way that they function as plot devices is absolutely abysmal. There is no logic to the way curses work in this film. There is no logic to the way that astronomy or astrology work in this film. It is just, let me just give you a random BS answer to move the story along, which pissed me off. So I think he's literally just there to be a callback to Will. That's all he is. He's just a caricature of Will Turner with no depth.
Well, yeah, and part of the reason why he has no depth goes back to what you said at the very end of that. Henry Turner is a monologue monster. He exists to be the narrator of this film, more or less, where he comes in and he says, I'm going to explain the plot to you. You know this in so many of the lines, but especially in lines that come up that don't even need to be there. But the creators of the script thought it was necessary to spell out explicitly what was going to happen or what was important for you to see as the audience, right? You get this from the start where he monologues to his father. Henry monologues to Will on the Flying Dutchman and says, I know how to free you. There is the trident of Poseidon, blah, 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 and tells this to the audience, not really to Will Turner, because why is, like, where is this coming from? How does Will not know about this, except he clearly does? So why is then Henry monologuing it to him? Because, Will says the line, it's a myth, but, Henry's from the start starts monologuing things to you. You know this later because you see the trident on screen, right? And then you hear Henry say, look, it's the trident of Poseidon. And you as the audience are going, okay, we didn't need an explicit call out for what this is. You guys have been searching for this the entire movie. And now that we see something that clearly looks like a trident, if we can't put two and two together, we deserve to be freaking falling off cliffs. Like, this is the most obvious thing. You don't need to have so the idea that they have these monologue lines out in explicit detail shows us that he is here to push the plot along in an explicit way rather than giving us a show don't tell scenario. They're not going to show you what's going to happen in this film. They're going to tell you every last bit of it.
Yep. Shall we move on to Caryna?
Well, I think the whole point is that if you're there monologuing the movie the entire time, you're not going to have time for character development. You're not going to
Yeah.
have time for an authentic character. And also, no one's going to believe this is an authentic character. Why? Because they're mansplaining everything to you. Like, if you want to talk about mansplaining, this guy is the epitome of it. So you don't want that. And no one's going to take them seriously as a consequence. Because no one talks like that. Anyways, yeah, go ahead to Caryna. That's fine.
Oh, Caryna, the worst character in this film. I hate her character. Okay. First of all, this is like, you have movies, right? Like Lord of the Rings. I think Lord of the Rings and Star Wars pre-Disney. Well, I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of Princess Leia, but I think characters in Clone Wars, they do a good job of establishing female protagonists who actually are competent and capable of doing things and make for good, if you want to say quote unquote girl bosses. Okay, I wouldn't use that word, but I think it gets the point across. They are capable, they are competent, they get things done, you're rooting for them, they have arcs, they're compelling. Okay. Disney's version of a girl boss is, we're just going to make a girl sound smart and do things and make her appear smart, and we're going to tell you she's smart and you're going to believe it. And if you don't, then you are misogynistic and you don't like women. That is stupid. This character is stupid. She's not a scientist. Matter of fact, it makes total sense that they were going to burn her at the stake, because her science was just divination magic. She's looking at star charts and pulling stuff out of her rear end and going, this star is telling me the latitude and longitude. Guess what? Stars don't tell you longitude, which means you can't find those locations using it. You're retarded. You're stupid. This isn't science. She's also explaining to sailors how tides work. If a sailor doesn't know how a tide works, they aren't a sailor. They're a poser. They're literally, there's no way. So like, the fact that she's sitting there saying, I'm a woman of science, is like the stereotype that these female characters get, where it's like, oh yeah, actually, that's not science. That is you being stupid and thinking you're a scientist, which makes sense because she learned science from a little notebook that her dad gave her. So she was never taught science. She thinks she knows it. Matter of fact, I think this movie would have been funnier if she was trying to take them places and they just ended up in the middle of the ocean. We're like, where are we? What is this? It's like, the science doesn't work. She doesn't end up being smart. She's mostly just actually performing like magic. Like there's no science behind it. And the fact that they keep shoving this word science down your throat is really stupid. But they're trying to like make her this persecuted woman who the world thinks is a magic user, but it's like, no, what she's doing is actually not science. So either one, the producers and the director were stupid and didn't know what science was themselves, in which case hire like literally any basic astronomer and they could give you this stuff. But apparently they didn't want to do that. Or they knew it was wrong and she's not persecuted, but we as the audience are led to believe that this is science. So I think that's super stupid in terms of her character development. I think she has no like actual connection to Barbossa, even though this is like completely forced towards the end of the movie, where it's like, oh, I have a dad, he gave me this book, and then Barbossa's like, oh shoot, that's my daughter, I slept with this random whore and now she has a baby and now I'm a dad and now I suddenly feel responsible for this individual that I'd never met before. And then he dies, and she's like, oh, shoot. Luke Skywalker moment. Okay, moving on now. Literally could not care less. And we're like supposed to feel bad, but it happens so quickly and we move on so fast that we don't care. Same thing happens, by the way, once Will Turner gets back. It's like supposed to be this super emotional moment for everyone, but it's like, oh, cool story, bro. All right, moving on. So the movie's rushed. We don't actually see her use any navigational equipment in this film. Where's the sextant? Where's all the different like charts and navigational techniques that she'd actually use, other than looking at a piece of paper, then up at the sky and going, aha, I have found the exact location of this random island that no one has ever been able to find before. But because I am a woman of science, I am better than every man that has ever come before me. And if you don't like it, you're misogynistic and you're a POS. So get out of my face. What the frick? It pissed me off.
Well, I mean, in her defense, she never claimed to be a sailor. She just claimed to be a woman of science. And science is powerful. It's more powerful than the power of the sailor at sea who reads the charts and uses sextants. She doesn't have to know how to do that.
She just uses her womanly intuition.
It's pretty strong.
I'm literally like, my brain was breaking in that film trying. Like, I don't even remember it, to be honest. That film, I like vaguely remembered it, and then I watched it, and then I fell asleep because it was so bad, and then I had to rewatch it because Matt, you were there when I fell asleep. I like completely just conked out after like a third of the film. Woke up at the end and went, "Oh, phew, man, that went by fast. All right, time to go do something more interesting." But yeah, I don't remember it being that terrible, but I remember just sitting there watching it, like losing my mind. I was like, what is this? If you want, the thing that's so unfortunate is like, you could make an interesting woman character who's actually using science. The problem is the science she's claiming to use, everybody would be using in that day and age, and it wouldn't be labeled as witchcraft. She'd have to be doing something revolutionary for them to consider it witchcraft. And so they just dumbed down the entire freaking universe of Pirates of the Caribbean to be absolute dimwits and buffoons who don't even know how to sail or use the stars to guide them, which has been essential for the last 4 films for them to even function on the high seas. So they dumb down the universe to make this one woman out to be smart, which she isn't even smart, so that the rest of the world can look at her and go, we don't know what tides are or reading the stars are, so you must be a witch. Burn the witch. And it's like, this is stupid. Give her something actually interesting. Make her an actual woman of science with something we don't understand yet in this day and age. And then she's compelling and actually being persecuted by these people. But no, we don't get any of that. And so her character is stupid, wasted. I couldn't care less what happened to her character. And honestly, her and Henry Turner deserve each other because they're both stupid characters.
So you like what the creators did with this, is what I'm saying.
Hey, it meant we didn't get any more Pirates movies, so we can only keep the first 3 and forget everything else. And then guess what? Johnny Depp said no more movies after Disney decided not to work with him for a bit. So if we ever get another one, honestly, it probably won't do very well at all because it doesn't have Jack Sparrow.
Sure. I mean, for my part, I'm not going to be as aggressive as you just were, but looking at Caryna Smith, I would generally come to the conclusion that this is the part of the film where they did take their creative elements and try to put in something that was unique to the universe. And the directors even said so. They were talking about it, and they said that they didn't want to recreate the Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann persona again in the film. They wanted to add something unique, a woman who was like a modern woman, I guess is the wording that I understand they took for this character. And so that's what Caryna Smith is supposed to be, the modern woman. But in the process, they dumb down all of the other pirates, and as a process, you get it's feminism crawling into pirates. And you got this a little bit in the last one, not really that much, but like this is really the effort where they're like, hello, men are stupid. Behold.
Well, the thing that's so stupid is they're not even doing feminism a favor. They're making feminism out to be a joke.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like you're not helping. This is not a good example of this. I think there's much stronger cases that you can make for this in cinema or not. And this is like a piece of crap they decided to put in front of us and say this is quality. No.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what we talk about all the time. Like if you're going to make an argument, strong arm the argument. Like make it as solid as possible. And they don't even try in this. It's such a
the thing is too
argument.
Is like, as much as I hated on Elizabeth Swann in previous films, I just don't like that she does Will Turner so dirty sometimes because he's gullible and he likes her. But, I think by the 3rd film, she's actually interesting. And she's like way more competent than Caryna is, even though she has no scientific background, because she understands the way that the game of piracy and the game of playing the British and the Spanish and all these different powers that be works. Whereas Caryna's just a bumbling. That's the other thing that's like insane, is that Caryna and Henry Turner have like zero knowledge whatsoever of how the piracy world works and somehow turn out better than Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann ever did. And you've got a dumbed down Jack Sparrow. You've got a dumbed down Barbossa, but somehow the world is just all that much safer for them, and that they could be absolutely brain dead and still just sail their way through the high seas and get this super powerful relic that nobody's been able to find before and break all the curses in the ocean. Oh, I'm gonna lose my mind.
It's the pirate's luck.
Also, why couldn't Jack use his compass the last 4 movies to find this thing? Question mark?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We got, didn't we get this in the last one too with the, I mean, there's just the idea that you just couldn't use the compass to find this earlier becomes a big aspect. Also, the fact that the compass, by being given away, breaks the curse is like another thing that you go like, how did this work? Why did this work? What does Jack's compass have anything to do with the original curse being brought upon Salazar and his crew and his ilk? We don't even know. Like, it doesn't make any sense. They just decided that once he drops this off for a bit of booze, the bad guys are free. And you go, well, okay, I guess they were just going with that. That's cool.
What's really stupid to me is this movie has a lot of the problems in terms of world building that the movies 7, 8, and 9 had, where they just break canon. Previously, Jack Sparrow, albeit like very brief, his backstory was he was working on a slave vessel for the British Navy, led a mutiny, took over the vessel, all the slaves were his crew. That was his backstory. But in this one, we just decide, oh, remember that war for all of pirate kind that happened? That was like the first of its kind. And what was that? Oh, the third movie? Oh, there was another one like 20 years ago too, where almost all of pirate kind was wiped out by Salazar. And Jack Sparrow, at like freaking 12 years old, saves everyone and gets a magic compass. And that magic compass he's been carrying around, and by the way, constantly giving away.
Yes. Yep.
All of a sudden, now that we hit movie 5, when he gives it away for beer, yeah, now it's going to break this curse and Salazar's going to come out. And what is Salazar? He's this random Spanish captain who's been hating on Jack Sparrow for 20 years. Never heard of him before, by the way. Apparently he was terrorizing the oceans. What's also just in terms of timeline doesn't work out. Apparently he made this deal with Davy Jones, which lasted 13 years, and that happened. Jack, I don't know. How old is Jack actually in this film? That is a good question. I have so many problems with this film. Oh my gosh. Okay, he's 60 years old. Okay, I guess the timeline can technically work out. It's still just obnoxious. Because I guess what is Henry? He's supposed to be like almost 20, at least 20 years old. I don't know. It's just there's so much stupid. The compass thing, I think, might have pissed me off more than the Caryna stuff, because Smith. It was like, why do we have this thing that has been pivotal, like actually like the focus of so many different characters in previous films, and has changed hands so many times, including Jack willingly giving it away?
Yep.
We have never had mention that him giving the compass away would free this guy. And even if we didn't, he should have just been freed. But all of a sudden, we hit movie 5, and now the compass is like magically tied to some curse. And if Jack Sparrow gives it away, it's going to free them. Makes no sense. I don't think there is any argument you could make in the defense of that specific like iteration of the compass that would even be remotely close to sounding intelligent.
Yeah. Well, I think, dude, this is that, and the thing with Caryna Smith and Barbossa were both moments where you know the film is bad when when these scenes happen in the film, you're so not engrossed in the film that instead of sitting there going, wow, this is so cool, you imagine yourself in the Disney writing room with the other writers as they say, guess what? We're going to do this thing and everyone's going to be like, whoa, in the theater, this is so crazy. And it's not. Like, you just, it's so bad. It doesn't hit at all. It leaves you questioning everything about the film. And at the end of the day, it makes you not think about this in any notable or positive way.
I think the Disney writers have the IQ of a sardine. How the heck do they come up with these stories and actually think they're good? And who's approving them? Why, how? It's like there's so much you could do with a film and just little tweaks to make it better, but no, we want to put this garbage out and spend millions of dollars on production and waste all these people's time. In 20 years, nobody's going to care about Pirates 5. It's going to be a speck on the chart of Disney films that have come out. It's terrible. It shouldn't exist. Unfortunately, it does.
Well, I think it's a testament to the fact that neither of us really distinctly remembers this film. And then when we came back to watch it, we went, oh, yes, these are all the reasons why we did not remember this film, because this film is one of the worst when it comes to Disney films. What are we doing here? You know, that's what you get.
Yeah. And I mean, okay. So we've talked about Caryna, talked about.
I was going to say, we should probably at least give some lip service to Armando Salazar for the sake of at least discussing.
Yeah. So what I was going to say before I get to that is their romance that they go for, I think, is another example of how it is forced. We as the audience are told that it's happening. They are given no reason why they ought to like each other other than they are a boy and girl of relatively the same age and within proximity of each other. They are just meant to be. And what's crazy is they're like, oh, we want to do something unique with, as opposed to like Will and Elizabeth. Will and Elizabeth was great. Okay. As much as I got pissed off at Elizabeth for things she was doing in the films, I think it works out aside from like the very end of the film and the way that it terminates. But I think overall, the way their relationship develops throughout the films at least is believable. Right? Especially from the get-go, right? Will is this person who has no parents. He's on this, like, in this town by himself. All he knows is this girl who found him and he's been friends with, and he develops these feelings for as he ages up. So his feelings are believable. Her feelings are somewhat believable as the film progresses, but at least, like, there's more there. Caryna and Henry are just like, oh, it's like you walk up to a girl, hey, I'm of age, you're of age, we're stuck on this boat together, something, you know, makes sense, huh? No, that's stupid. So I just don't think that their romance is believable either, which was a whole side plot that they kept coming back to throughout the film, where Jack's like giving Henry advice and Karina's like, oh, I don't care about this guy, but actually I do. And it's like, okay, buddy, don't buy it. Did you have anything to say on that? I was going to move on.
No, I mean, I'm not much of a romance critique, but like I agree, it was stock at its purest form. There were Hallmark movies better than that.
Oh, I agree. I think personally, the best romances are the ones where the least is said, and you as the audience are having to pick up on things through their actions rather than them explicitly going up to someone and going, I love you. So I think it's more compelling too. And if we're trying to tell the story of adults, they're not like horny, hormonal teenagers who are falling in love at first sight. So you're not going to get that in, most films don't take place over the course of like multiple months. I could be wrong. That's just my feeling of things.
Yeah. I mean, whether it does or doesn't is the point is this one did not do it well. So, you know, you can critique Frozen or whatever. Don't really care. The point is this film actually did a very terrible job of it. So let's move on to Salazar, though. What are your thoughts on the villain of this film?
My
He's so good, right? He's like
He's
probably the
actually
best
he's
villain of all of
actually
these.
he's actually probably the worst villain, which is crazy because I hate Blackbeard so much. Um,
It's also crazy because Javier Bardem is an amazing actor.
yeah, but this villain is so flat and so basic, and his entire character is just devolved into I want to kill Jack the Sparrow. Okay, wow, crazy development for a villain. How did we go from Davy Jones to this? Not to mention, we have yet again an undead crew with a magical ship and a magical captain that's terrorizing the seven seas. Wow, it's almost like I'm getting third breakfast. What is this? Give me something new. Why? Like, ask yourself the question as the viewer: why do you go to see a movie? Right? It's it should be at least entertaining. I think it should be intellectually stimulating. I think you should come away having questions of like inflection. But I think on top of all of that, you should be going to watch a unique story. And that's the question of why watch one film over another. This film is just a copy paste of the surface level ideas of like the first trilogy, if you will. I guess it's more like 2 and 3, but you just copied and pasted the ideas and then just made a terrible version of it. It's like a 2-year-old
It's
opening the cookbook for Davy Jones and going, how am I going to make this, and then does an abysmal job of it because they don't know how to bake a cake. I realized that. Yeah, anyways.
yeah.
Am I wrong?
I mean, no. I mean, it's actually a copy and paste of the fourth one too, which is kind of crazy because the fourth one is still garbage. But if you were to
Yeah,
take a stock version of a stock version, you get an even more stock version, right?
it's
You
actually
take the
so
real life
terrible.
3D model, turn it into a 3D drawing, and then you take the 3D drawing and turn it into a stick figure. There you go. That's what you got. It you're just rehashing things like he wants to kill Jack Sparrow. He can't go onto land. He is cursed. He has an undead crew. You know, the ship's alive. We've already talked about all these things. It's just I don't understand how they even had some interesting elements that had potential. They just kind of threw in there as like side bits. For example, the fact that Salazar can actually take possession of other people's bodies. Oh, okay. That's actually kind of interesting. That is a unique plot point compared to the other ones that we've seen. What do they do with that? Absolutely nothing. Because now that he gets down into the ocean and fights Jack Sparrow for some total of 15 seconds, he gets out of the body and goes back to his normal one, which it's like, why did we go through all of this? Once again, not clear, not sure. It meant nothing at the end of the day, so here we go. It's just once again, how are we getting to this spot? Who greenlit this?
Well, it's just like it's the same problem I had with, say, the live action How to Train Your Dragon. Why would I go watch this film when I have another one that is better and more entertaining? And there are problems with this one, and I think this one's just a much worse version of that, right? I think How to Train Your Dragon is more or less like an actual just copy paste of the other film, and in my mind, it's just I like the animated version better, so I have no reason to watch this one. This film takes it
Right.
to
Well,
another level where it's like it's taking all the basic plot points, doing them in million times worse than the actual like blueprint, if you will, which was 2 and 3 with Davy Jones and his undead crew, and you're just botching it. I mean, the other thing is with Davy Jones, you actually had the British be a threat. What are the British doing in this one? Nothing,
well,
maybe.
it's supposed to be like the Spanish are now also an element in the last two films, just randomly because just adding in another nation makes it compelling. I don't know. Also, just on the side note with the How to Train Your Dragon, I think that there is an inherently different purpose with those films. I'm not going to say that the live version is any better than the animated one. I think the animated one is better. We discussed that in that review,
Yeah,
but in that film, at least the intended result of the new How to Train Your Dragon film is it's supposed to be the same story. And so you can come
Yeah.
into that with that expectation versus this is supposed to be an extension of a continuing series. And so if you're going to do that, you need to not just extend the series, extend the ideas and thoughts you have presented in that series. And they don't do that. They just redo the same film that we've seen before.
Yeah. No, I get that. I think my point was just like, you want something unique with films, and so even with live action remakes, there's typically something where it's like, I think live action remakes
The
are
Beast from Beauty
problematic.
and the Beast sings his own song, at least, right?
Okay. True. But no, I think live action remakes are a problem all on their own, because if you're going to watch something unique, I think that's a problem. But that said, my point with this film is just that you aren't even claiming it's a live action remake. You're claiming it is something unique when it's not. And it's not even that it's not unique. It's that it's not unique and it's terrible. So,
Yeah. And that's what you got with Salazar.
yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on the themes of the story and the lasting impact? Will this movie have a lasting impact? Is there strong themes that we take away from it and are like, oh my goodness, I learned so much from Salazar and Jack Sparrow in this film. I'm going to take it with me and think of it forever.
Well, I mean, considering this is a copy of 2 and 3, I think it's just a lame copy of the themes of 2 and 3, which we've already discussed. But it's like they're trying to take this idea of like redemption and sacrifice that you got with, say, Will Turner, and they're doing it with Barbossa. But the whole thing, like we barely talked about Barbossa, but I think Barbossa's character is, again, stock. He's thrown in there to give Caryna some sort of depth because she's got this relationship with her father. But like I said before, she gets a Luke Skywalker awe moment where her dad dies and it's supposed to be emotional, but she like looks at it and goes, wow, that's terrible. All right, moving on. And it's like, wow, okay, cool. We as the audience, even though we're told to feel sad about it, don't even have time to grieve about it. So it's like, okay, cool, moving on. Wow, that's crazy. We're kind of given this idea that like these characters are searching for their identity, but they don't really find it, considering they're so flat by the end of the movie still. So I don't know that their search for identity even terminates, but it's like they're both kind of like, oh, I'm the son of Will Turner and I'm this woman of science who's told she's a witch. What is my place in this world? I don't know. Do we even know by
Sure.
the end?
Well, and I think that a good shorthand that at least we've discussed to some degree on this podcast is the idea of how well can you say the themes are discussed and developed comes partially from the character development, where it's like
Yeah.
if these are true themes in the story, they should be discussed and grappled with as the character grows as the protagonist in this film. And if they don't grow as a character, the idea is that they are trying to convey will not grow either. And you get that from this, and that Henry Turner says, I'm going to go free my father. Guess what he does? He goes and frees his father. Caryna Smith says, I am a woman of science and I am right and all these men are wrong. And guess what? At the end, she's a woman of science and she is right and all these men are wrong. And that's what you get. This whole thing about Hector Barbossa, actually, like you said, is a side tangent that means nothing at the end of the film. She just looks into the camera and says, oh, I am a better person because now I know who my dad was for half a second. And then you're just supposed to buy that. So the idea that she grew is not there. Jack Sparrow, we already said, is a stock version of himself, so he doesn't grow in this film. Maybe Joshua B. Gibbs grows. I don't know. I haven't thought too deeply about his, but I don't think so.
I think the other thing too is like, I didn't even think about this until now, but it's like, why is Caryna even doing this? Like, she gives us this lame answer of like, my dad left me with this book to let me make something of myself. But it's like, why specifically the trident? What does she want with it? Because by the end of the film, she honestly couldn't care less. And if her whole that I think is really where the problem with Barbossa comes out, because her whole goal is like she's searching for this father and she wants to make him proud. But then the second she finds out she has a dad and then he dies, it means nothing to her, and she just now becomes a completely void character who's just there as the love interest of Henry Turner at that point.
Well, it's at the end of the film, right? Doesn't that mean her arc is completed and she is whole? That's the whole point, right?
All right, we can move on.
uh, yeah, just trying to rage bait Andrew here. What do you?
Oh,
So
this movie
yeah, I mean,
rage baited me all on its own. I don't think you need to put in extra work.
what do you? Let's talk about that lasting impact. Let's wrap this thing up. What are your thoughts? Will this film have a lasting impact? You've hinted a little bit about it.
They haven't made another one, so I mean, I guess it did kind of spell the end of the Pirates series. Um, I don't know. It's very unfortunate because I think the aesthetic of piracy and the British Navy and naval warfare and all the things you can do there are so cool, especially when you add in these mythical elements. And you don't have to do Jack Sparrow, right? Like, Jack Sparrow sure has this massive event that unfolds with Davy Jones and all that. But similar to like how Star Wars has the main series of like the Skywalker saga, you still get very cool characters like the whole Andor show. And you get things like Star Wars Rebels, where there's like these contained character arcs and stories that are told within the greater narrative that are still very compelling if done right. And it's like you could totally tell the story of a character who's living on the high seas during this time that's more contained, but is still just as compelling of a narrative for future projects, right? 4 and 5 didn't have to be these grandiose stories of the Fountain of Youth and Blackbeard and his undead crew, or Salazar's revenge, who is such a basic villain, right? You could contain the entire story to a singular ship, and you could have the story be about the conflict between a captain and his crew and make it compelling. But just have it be set in the world in which there are threats from the ocean and from like you're fighting against this oceanic deity, which is what is it, Tiadalma? What's the name of her goddess name?
Calypso? You're
You've
talking
got
about
you've got you've got you've got man against God, which is Calypso. You've got man against the environment, which is all the mythical creatures and powers and curses and artifacts of the oceans in the Caribbean. And then you've got man against man, which is the British Empire. You've got so many different things you could utilize to create conflict and increase tension for these characters. And yet we've only ever heard the stories of Will Turner, Elizabeth Swann, and Jack Sparrow. And then now we've got Barbossa, and we're like kind of trying to continue on that legacy. But like, I don't know. I think Disney massively misses opportunities because, like I said at the beginning, they've got like this 2-track mindset where it's either doing something so different that it breaks canon and nobody likes it, or we're going to do something that's just a complete callback to older works that's nothing unique about it. And it's like neither one of those is good. Why can't they figure that out? Just do something unique like they did when they first created Pirates. Completely unique setting, unique world building based off of a a ride of all things, and it does well.
right.
And so it's like, I don't know, if they could take a ride and make a film like that, the 3 movies they did, now they've already got the world created. Just create a few more characters. And you've got, so the thing is, like, right, they like their creative liberty. The problem is they take creative liberty when they don't have it. So take creative liberty where you do have it by creating new characters and new items or curses, and then do what you will with that.
Sure. Well, I think even beyond that, if you look at the franchise going back to its original creation spawns from this point where this is a ride about pirates. Let's make it into a film. The very idea of that is pretty loose. Like you have a lot to play with there, and so it makes
Yeah.
sense of all of the different intellectual properties that Disney owns. It makes sense that they would take this one and try to continue it with like a new set of interesting characters, right? The idea that and this is kind of what I imagine they were somewhat going for by focusing on Henry and Caryna in this one, is this idea that they were trying to pass off the mantle somewhat slowly to a new person to take on the reins of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise and be the new face, right? Jack Sparrow cannot be the face of this franchise indefinitely. You need something to hold it up. Otherwise, the franchise is going to die. And so the idea that these were supposed to be these new characters made sense to me and honestly wasn't necessarily a bad move. The question then becomes is like, are these characters good in their own right? And the answer is they just weren't, because the passing of the baton was not done well. They didn't make us care about these characters. They weren't significant. They weren't important. What they were doing felt basic to the highest degree. And so you don't get anything going with that. And you get some sense that even with this, even as I felt like they were trying to pass on the baton, they were still hedging their bets. And you get that with that ending scene where you have Will Turner show up with Elizabeth Swann, and at the same time you have them going to sleep. And who tries to walk in? Oh, the ghost of Davy Jones, right? We don't know what it is, but we see his shadow. And then is that just a dream? Well, probably not, because there's barnacles on the floor where he was just standing. So probably real. There's things like that they show that say, oh, well, maybe we'll hedge our bets and bring back Davy Jones, this terrible evil that was from the original trilogy. So, they were hedging their bets in every sense of the word in this film, and it just didn't work out.
Well, also just the entire thing with Davy Jones, even though it's like aesthetically pleasing, I think, like as someone who thinks Davy Jones' aesthetic is freaking awesome, it makes no sense whatsoever. If you broke all the curses in the sea by breaking the trident, in what universe does that result in not just Davy Jones coming back, but the corrupted, tentacle-faced Davy Jones, captain of the Flying Dutchman, coming back? What in what universe does that make sense? Like, that's the one scene I do remember when I watched it, because it just broke my brain. I was sitting there going, how does that work?
Sure, and I think of all the things, I would give them maybe a benefit of a doubt for that one, if only because the assumption is that they would provide a answer in the next one, right? And if they're good writers, they would justify it outpacing Poseidon's trident doing its thing. But yeah, of course, it doesn't make sense in the framework they gave us for this film, which doesn't make sense. Only other side note I want to bring up, just because this was sticking in my mind as I watched it, Keira Knightley shows up in this film, right? And she shows up for some total of, I counted it, 66 seconds in this film. And that's including every moment a tiny smidgen of her body is on screen, even if it's just an elbow. 66 seconds, and she got paid $3.7 million to show up in this film. So, good on her for making, what was it? $56,000 a second. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
That is crazy.
Anyways, I don't know if you have more to say on any of that, Andrew. Otherwise,
let's check. All right, to do. I mean, I had notes on the astronomy thing, right? She treats the constellations like GPS coordinates. It's scientifically impossible to tell longitude from the stars. You would need. You can find latitude using the North Star and using a sextant. You can't use that to find longitude, which means you can't find exact coordinates, which she was doing in the film. You would need a chronometer, which isn't invented until like the 1770s, which this film takes place decades before that. So again, breaking just movie canon. Which the other thing is crazy is, like, if you wanted to say this was different than historical Caribbean, that's fine. But they're trying to make a stand in this film by distinctly separating science from magic. And they don't give us any reason to believe that science during this time is different than science during the time in the real world that would have, like, been along the same time period. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, the science of that time is no different than the science of our time in 1750, 1740.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I know you're trying to like provide a logical framework. I assume, even from the third film, to be honest, is that they're just breaking science and serving it for their own purposes. Like a lot of the things that you see in even the third film are somewhat questionable, but at least they have some like, well, this is the Pirates of the Caribbean film. I think the fact that the narrative continually devolves worse and worse as the films progress is a bad sign, and it's just over the top in this one. I had some
Well,
problems in the third one with it, but it didn't break the world. In this
yeah.
case, it's actively breaking the world.
Well, so my problem is not that the science doesn't make a ton of sense, right? Up until this film, they hadn't tried to claim anything was scientifically possible or accurate. They just were like, it's Jack Sparrow, it's the high seas, there's magic, there's crazy stuff that happens, just believe it. But this one is like actually trying to come up with some sort of scientific rationale for it, which is where it just bothered me, because they like really doubled down, and it's like when someone doubles down and they're wrong, and they're so obviously wrong that it's just like, you're just like, I don't even know where to begin with this. And I think it just goes to like, it just defeats the whole purpose of her character, because she's supposed to be smart, but she ends up being stupid.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Anyways,
we didn't really get into the trident. We don't know why it holds all the curses, or like there's no explanation behind that, as opposed to in previous films where at least it told why certain curses exist, or like how they come about and what the rules are regarding them. Like, right, you get the Aztec
right.
gold, the blood debt, you get Davy Jones and Calypso. Also, breaking curses had a cost in previous films. Like there's an exchange that occurs when you break the curse. Like the
Right.
best example is Will Turner breaking his dad's curse. He has to stab the heart. But this one is just like, it's a
Well, not just he has
fix-all.
to stab the heart, he has to become the
Yeah,
new captain of the Dutchman. Or
exactly.
like with the original gold, there was a blood sacrifice. Blood had to be spilled to break the
Exactly.
curse. Yeah.
But in this one, it's just like, we have this magic wand that solves all of our problems. Have your cake and eat it too, fam. Like, it's stupid. It just takes all the risk and the tension out of their final destination in this film.
Yeah. 100%. And that destination is Jack Sparrow getting back on the Black Pearl, adopting the little monkey Jack, and sailing off into the distance back as the pirate of the high seas. What a
Yep.
great ending.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew loved it. I mean, if anything, this one went back to the very first film where it has Jack Sparrow sailing off with his crew to the high seas again. I mean, I don't know how I feel about it. I think in one sense, it's like it breaks all of the other previous films we've seen where he's down on his luck at the very end and sailing off again anyways, other than the first one. But on the second hand, it's like, well, maybe they're trying to say the series is over because he's sailing off into the high seas in his own ship, being back to being the good old pirate that he's supposed to be. And we're going to leave it at that. If you take it like that, maybe it's okay. But I don't know. Here we are. I guess that's probably a good place to end it anyways, because the point is we all had a problem with this, so don't give it its time of day. And there you go. That's the pod. We hope you all enjoyed, because we did not. We'll be back as we always are next week. We'll see you all then.